The millionaire loved the poor girl since youth, but only dared to say it after buying her at auction. Before we begin, we'd love to know, what country are you watching from? Leave it in the comments. And at the end, don't forget to give this story a rating from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. He built an empire from nothing, but he never built the courage to tell her how he felt. 20 years ago, she was the girl who smiled at him in the school hallway, the only light in a life filled with silence. Now she's walking into his boardroom, confident, radiant, completely unaware that the billionaire sitting across from her has loved her since the 11th grade. And this time, he won't let her walk away. The letter he never sent. He never forgot her, not once in 20 years. Not when he built his first $1 million deal, not when Forbes called him the quiet visionary behind Kane Tech, not even when he stood on stage accepting Entrepreneur of the Year, with cameras flashing and strangers cheering. He smiled for all of them. But inside, he was still 17, still silent, still staring at a girl who didn't know he existed. Her name was Claire Jensen, and she was sunlight, the kind that made everything softer. She wore chipped nail polish and helped lost freshmen find their lockers. She danced barefoot during prom setup when no one was looking. She once lent him a pencil during a pop quiz and whispered, "I trust you." She never saw the way he looked at her after that. Never knew about the letter he wrote the night before graduation. He folded it twice, addressed it to her, slipped it in her locker. But she left town early for college, never got it, and he never wrote another letter to anyone, ever again, until now, because this morning, the woman who once haunted every page of his sketchbook walked into his boardroom. Hair swept up, confidence sharp, smile polite. She didn't recognize him. She introduced herself like they were strangers, and maybe they were, because the boy who once loved her from behind a row of chipped desks was now the billionaire across the table. She doesn't know the truth. Not yet. But he's going to tell her, even if it breaks him, even if it's 20 years too late. Chapter 1. The name on the folder in front of him said her name, Claire Jensen. Black ink. City font. Legal consultant. Stratmore & Cole LLP. Nathaniel Kane stared at the letters like they were written in a different lifetime. He had just spent 45 minutes pretending to care about valuation models and pending clauses, nodding, while his executive team debated projections. But when the assistant brought in the folder and said, "She'll be joining us in 5 the room fell silent. At least for him. He didn't hear the rest, just his own pulse, rushing loud and disoriented, like it did in 11th grade, the first time she said his name out loud. "Hey, Nate, you dropped this." A pencil, his sketchbook, her fingers brushing his. That moment was still inside him, alive. And now she was walking into the room again, 2 decades older. The door clicked. She stepped in, hair longer, clothes sharper. But the same grace. She didn't pause, didn't blink, just smiled, calm and professional, and said, "Good morning. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was everything Manhattan promises it will be." Her voice hadn't changed. His name wasn't on her lips. She didn't recognize him, not even a flicker. She took a seat directly across the table from him and began laying out papers, discussing compliance risks in the merger with a tone that was confident, deliberate, and warm. He couldn't speak. Not yet. He simply nodded when needed, answered when spoken to. No one noticed anything strange, just a quiet CEO doing what he always did, listening. But inside, he was unraveling. She picked up her coffee, took a sip, and then paused. "Sorry, this cup's wet." She grabbed a napkin, blotting the bottom, and for a second, the side of the cup faced him, written in black marker, "Claire," with a small heart under the E, the same way she used to sign the yearbook messages she wrote for friends. He wanted to say something, anything. He wanted to lean across the table and say, "Do you remember sophomore year, when we painted the gym banners together and you asked me if I believed in fate?" But instead, he sat there in a room filled with glass and chrome and power and couldn't move. After the meeting, she stood, gathering her papers. "Mr. Kane, thank you for your time today. I'll follow up with your legal team." He rose, finally managing a small smile. "Thank you." "Miss Jensen." She paused at the door, turned slightly, looked at him, brows knit for the briefest second, like a ghost brushed past her memory. But then it was gone, and she left. Nathaniel stayed in the room after everyone had gone. The coffee cup still sat on the table. He picked it up, slowly, carefully. Her name written in Sharpie, her handwriting, or maybe the barista's. Did it matter? His hand closed around the cup, like it might disappear. She was back, and she didn't even know what she'd walked into. He had waited half his life for this moment. Not fame, not fortune, just to see her again. And now she was here, and it hurt more than he ever imagined. She didn't remember him, but the way he still remembered her, it might ruin him. Chapter 2. The letter in the drawer. The city blinked below him, glittering, distant, cold. Nathaniel sat alone in his study, the lights off, except for the soft gold spill of his desk lamp. The folder with her name was still on the table. He hadn't opened it since the meeting. He didn't need to. He already knew her life better than any bio inside. Claire Jensen, Columbia Law, pro bono work, divorcee, single mother, lives in Brooklyn. The internet was thorough, but it couldn't tell him if she still loved lilacs, or if she still bit the inside of her cheek when she was nervous, or if she ever thought about the boy in the back of the classroom who never found the courage to speak. His hands moved before his thoughts did. He opened the middle drawer of his desk, reached past a stack of neatly aligned contracts, and pulled out a thin, worn envelope. The paper was yellowing. His name was written on the front, not hers. But inside was a letter he wrote to her. He unfolded it. The paper, soft, at the creases, fragile now. "Claire, I know you don't see me." "Not really." "That's okay. I don't expect you to, but I see you every day, and maybe that's enough. Maybe it's enough that you smiled at me once. Enough that when I look back on high school, you're the only part that doesn't hurt. You're going to do great things. I just hope you'll remember me, even if you never knew my name." He had written it the night before graduation, then spent the next morning pacing the hallway, standing in front of her locker, gripping the envelope with both hands. In the end, he never left it, never gave it, just walked away, and then she was gone. He looked up now, at the same city that had once promised him everything. Success, recognition, respect. He had gotten it all, and none of it compared to the ache that rose in him when she'd looked him in the eye and said, "Nice to meet you, nice to meet you." As if they hadn't spent 3 years orbiting each other in the same high school hallways. As if she hadn't already lived in his chest for 2 decades. He rose from the desk and crossed to the safe behind the bookshelf. The code was her birthday. Inside, next to real estate deeds and stock certificates, was a smaller box oak, hand-carved. He opened it. Sketches of her, all of her. Claire laughing behind a cafeteria tray. Claire on the soccer field bleachers. Claire holding a book to her chest. Mid-sentence, Claire walking away, unaware she was taking his whole world with her. He pulled out one drawing, the last one, the one he did the day after she left. She's sitting beneath the willow tree outside the school gym, backpack beside her. Reading, he drew her from memory. Her head tilted in thought, her lips slightly parted. Underneath the sketch he'd written, "I missed my chance." He placed the sketch beside the letter and stared at them both. How do you speak now, when silence has been your only language for 20 years? Some people forget their first love. Others build entire empires trying to become the person they think could deserve them. He folded the letter slowly, slipped it into a new envelope. No return address, no signature, just for when you're ready to remember. He didn't know if she'd ever open it, but maybe this time he wouldn't walk away. Chapter 3. Her son's name is the same. Nathaniel didn't want to be there. Kane Tech's charity mixer was meant to impress donors and soften press headlines about the pending merger. There were rooftop string lights, catered oysters, and people saying his name like it tasted expensive. But all he could think about was her. Claire had emailed that morning, just a brief note confirming the next review meeting. Professional. Polite, nothing more. He had stared at the blinking cursor for 10 minutes before replying, looking forward to it. Lies. He was counting the hours. He sipped his drink and drifted toward the edge of the terrace. Some board member's wife was laughing too loud. A young tech partner made a joke about venture capitalists being emotionally bankrupt. Nathaniel smiled on cue, nodded, until he heard it. Ellie. No, don't touch that. A woman's voice. Familiar. He turned just as Claire appeared near the entrance. A young boy, darting past her legs, heading for the dessert table. Sorry, she said breathlessly to the waiter. Catching up to the child, she looked different tonight, less composed. Flushed cheeks, messy bun, cardigan too light for the night air. And the boy, dark curls, sharp eyes, maybe 8, maybe 9. Nathaniel's heart slowed. Ellie. The name rang in his ears louder than the music. Claire scooped the boy up with a tired smile. This is why I don't bring you to work things. He giggled. But you said there'd be cupcakes. Cupcakes are not a dinner food, she told him. But I'm small. Small people need sweet fuel, he declared proudly. She laughed, and so did the stranger beside her. Nathaniel couldn't move. Later that night, he stood in his penthouse, the glass of untouched bourbon in his hand, warming without being sipped. Ellie, he whispered the name again. He remembered that name because he had created it. It was the name of the hero in a short comic series he'd drawn in senior year, a quiet boy who could hear other people's pain like music. He'd only ever shown it to one person, his art teacher, and Claire. One day after class, she'd seen the sketch in his notebook and said, "He's different. I like him." He remembered how his heart pounded when she touched the page. That night, he stayed up until 2 a.m., drawing her into the story. He never told her, but she remembered she had named her son after a boy in his sketchbook. Meanwhile, Claire was brushing crumbs from Eli's lips in their cramped Brooklyn kitchen. You didn't tell me it was a rich people party, he grumbled. She smirked. What gave it away? The chandelier or the $20 cupcakes? He grinned. Both. Then, a beat of silence. Mom, he asked, do you ever miss people? You don't know. She blinked. What do you mean? He shrugged. Like someone you almost met, or someone you should have met. Like they were meant to be there, but never came. Her hand froze over his cheek. For a moment, she couldn't speak. I do, she whispered. Sometimes, back in his penthouse, Nathaniel opened his drawer again, pulled out the comic. Page 3, Penel Fought. A boy with soft eyes and a quiet mind holding a letter he'll never send. Above him, the name, Ellie. She named her son after a boy she never knew. But he had always been watching. What if he had been there, not in memory, but in life? For the first time since she walked back into his world, he wondered if maybe she had never left. Chapter 4. The rainy elevator. The city was a soaking blur. Streetlights shimmered on wet pavement. Traffic hummed low and tired. The sky wept without apology. Claire Jensen stepped into the Kane Tech lobby, clutching her damp tote bag, hair half frizzed from the rain she'd tried to beat. She muttered a quiet curse under her breath as she shook out her coat, droplets flinging off in all directions. She was here late, too late. A revised clause in the acquisition contract had required immediate attention, and she'd volunteered to deliver it in person rather than risk a misread by email. She didn't expect anyone to be here, not at this hour. But the man in the navy coat standing near the elevator wasn't just anyone. Nathaniel Kane stood still, spine straight, shoulders square, hands calmly folded in front of him, like a statue pretending to be human. His expression didn't flicker when she stepped into the lobby, but his heart skipped like an old record. She noticed him. He gave a brief nod. "You're still here," she said, surprised. I could say the same. A ping echoed as the elevator arrived. The doors slid open. They both stepped in, alone. The doors closed. The air changed, not from heat or humidity, from memory, from the kind of tension that hums underneath words that no one dares say. Claire glanced down at her heels. "I didn't think I'd be working past 9 again this week." Nathaniel said nothing, just watched the red digital numbers descend slowly. 50. 49. 48. Raindrops slid down the back of her neck from her soaked hair. She shivered slightly. He took off his coat in silence, held it out. She hesitated. "You don't have to. It's warm," he said simply. She took it. The weight of it surprised her. Heavy, real, like him. She slid her arms through and inhaled. Cedarwood, ink, him. Silence stretched, but not awkward, just full. "I've been thinking about your son," he said softly. She blinked. "Ellie," he nodded once. "He's a good name." She smiled. "Thank you. It's from a story I read in high school. Comic. Actually, don't remember the name." Nathaniel's gaze flickered. "Really?" "Yeah." She looked off to the elevator panel. There was a boy in it. Soft-spoken. Kind. He saw the world differently. "I always liked him." Nathaniel's throat tightened. "Did you name him after that boy?" She chuckled. "Weird." "Right." He didn't answer, just watched her. She still remembered, even if she didn't know what she was remembering. The elevator pinged again. 32nd floor. Still 15 floors to go. She turned toward him, then just a little. Studied him in the muted light. "You remind me of someone I used to know," she said. He stayed quiet. "From high school, maybe. There was a boy, always drawing in the back of the class. Never spoke much." He looked at her, calm and unreadable. "What happened to him?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't even think I knew his name." Nathaniel's fingers curled slightly at his side. "He was probably invisible," he said. She shook her head. "No. He saw everything. I think I just wasn't looking closely enough." The elevator slowed. 26th floor. She didn't move. Neither did he. Finally, the elevator stopped. Claire stepped out first, still wrapped in his coat. She turned, held it out. "Thank you. Keep it," he said gently. "It's still raining." She opened her mouth, closed it again, and then, quietly, she said, "You have kind eyes. I don't think I ever told you that." Then she walked away. Nathaniel remained in the elevator, alone. She didn't know it yet, but that was the second time she'd said those words to him. The first time was 17 years ago, in a hallway, with a pencil in her hand. There are 3 times he almost told her the truth. Tonight was the second. Chapter 5. The sketchbook in the safe. The coat still smelled like her. Nathaniel placed it gently on the edge of the couch, as if setting down something alive, fragile, borrowed, holy. He hadn't turned on any lights. The city poured its glow through the glass blue, gold, white casting long, trembling shadows across the room. He stood there for a long time, listening to the rain, to the echo of her voice in the elevator, to the memory that clung to her name like ivy on stone. "You have kind eyes?" She'd said it again, not knowing she had said it once before. It was junior year. She'd returned a sketchbook he'd dropped by accident. She hadn't looked at the pages, or maybe she had, but when she handed it back, she'd smiled and said, "You have kind eyes. You should draw yourself sometime." He never did, because he didn't know who he was. Not without her in the picture. Now, 20 years later, he walked to the far side of his study, toward the bookshelf he rarely touched. He pressed his palm against a panel. It clicked softly. A hidden door swung open, revealing a safe, 6 digits. Her birthday. He turned the dial, opened it, and pulled out what he had hidden there. What he had kept, even when he gave away everything else. A black leather sketchbook, frayed at the spine, pages thick with graphite and time. He carried it to his desk and opened it. Page 1, Claire, laughing, with her head tilted back, hair in a ponytail, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands. Page 2, Claire, tying her shoelaces on the gym steps. Page 5, Claire, reading on the bleachers, her legs tucked under her, a single leaf in her hair. Page 8, Claire, the moment she turned to look at him in biology class. He'd only drawn half her face. He never finished it. Page 14, Claire, from memory, on the day she left. He had drawn her through the years, not just as a teenager, but as a dream, as a woman, as someone who might have been beside him if only he'd spoken. He had drawn her older, smiling at a dinner table, holding a child, drawn her standing in a sunlit room, paintbrush in hand, drawn her sitting across from him at a cafe, laughing at a joke he hadn't yet told. He flipped to the last page, empty, still blank. He picked up a pencil, and for the first time in 20 years, he drew her as she was now. In his elevator, her face wet with rain, her mouth soft with wonder, wearing his coat, looking at him like she was trying to remember. He shaded the final line, closed the book, then opened a drawer and pulled out a clean envelope. This time, he didn't hesitate. He slid the drawing inside and wrote one line on the front. For the girl who said, "I had kind eyes." He didn't sign it, didn't need to. She would know, or maybe she wouldn't, but he was done hiding. Sometimes we hold on to memories so tightly, they stop being memories and become blueprints. For the future, we're still too scared to build it. He sealed the envelope, and with it, 20 years of silence. Tomorrow, he'd leave it where she could find it. Chapter 6, a letter left at her door. Claire opened the door with her hair still wet from the shower and one sneaker unlaced. She wasn't expecting anything. Not a letter, not a memory. But there it was, a single white envelope resting just beside her welcome mat. No return address, no stamp, no name on the front, just 4 words, handwritten in soft, slanted script. For the girl who said I had kind eyes. Her breath caught. Something about the curve of the letters, the steadiness of the ink, the familiarity of being seen, even when she didn't ask to be. She glanced down the hallway, empty. She picked it up slowly, like it might vanish. Inside was a sketch, no note, no explanation, just a pencil drawing, her. From the elevator head turned slightly, raindrops clinging to her cheek. His coat wrapped around her shoulders. Her lips parted like she was about to say something and forgot what. It was her. Exactly as she was, but seen like she hadn't been in years. Claire sat on the edge of her couch, heart racing, staring at the image. She traced the lines with her eyes, the softness of her brow, the tiredness around her mouth. She blinked once, and suddenly, it wasn't just a drawing. It was a memory of a hallway, of a boy who never spoke, who always sat one row behind her, whose sketchbook she picked up once after class and handed back. "You have kind eyes," she had said. "You should draw yourself sometime." He didn't answer, just nodded and looked down, cheeks pink. She remembered thinking he was handsome in a quiet, unfinished way. She remembered wondering if he ever looked at her. Her hands trembled as she flipped the sketch over. On the back, barely visible, one line written in graphite. I never stopped. She stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and didn't drink it. Instead, she stared at the window. Could it be him? No, impossible. That boy, whatever his name was, he disappeared. She left for college. He never reached out. She forgot him, didn't she? Then why was her heart racing like she was 17 again? She pulled out an old shoebox from the top of her closet. Inside, photos, yearbooks, faded Polaroids, letters from friends, a pressed flower, a folded napkin from senior prom. She flipped open her senior yearbook. Page 47, homeroom photos. There, row 2, Nathaniel Kane, glasses, hoodie, pencil behind his ear. The same eyes, kind, quiet, unspoken. She blinked, stunned, then whispered, "Oh my God." She's walking past the art room. He's sitting by the window, sketching. She sees the lines on the page, a girl reading under a tree. She realizes it's her. She pauses. He sees her, closes the notebook. Their eyes meet. She smiles. He looks away. That was the last time. Back in the present, her phone buzzed. A text. Nathaniel Kane. Would you like to grab coffee before next week's review? She stared at the message, then down at the drawing, then back at his name. Sometimes we forget people who were never supposed to be forgotten until they remind us not with words, but with memory made real. She typed one word, yes, then pressed send, and whispered to herself, I remember now. Chapter 7. Why didn't you say something? Nathaniel arrived first. He chose the table by the window, where light softened everything. He didn't bring his laptop. He didn't check his phone. He just waited, not with impatience, but with something quieter, heavier, like someone preparing to open a sealed box inside their chest. At exactly 2:00 p.m., the bell over the door chimed. Claire stepped inside. No makeup, no blazer, just a soft gray sweater and jeans. Her hair was loose. She looked real. She saw him and smiled a hesitant, uncertain kind of smile, the kind that only happens when something buried begins to resurface. She sat down. Neither spoke for a moment. Then she glanced at the sketch in her bag, the one he left at her door. That was you, wasn't it? He nodded. The boy in the hoodie, the sketchbook, the one she trailed off. The one you said had kind eyes. He finished softly. She exhaled a shaky, breathless kind of laugh. God, I can't believe it. I remember now. You were always so quiet. I still am, he said. She looked at him fully now. But you weren't invisible. Not to me. He blinked. I saw you. She said, maybe not clearly, maybe not the way I should have, but I noticed. He lowered his eyes. I was never brave enough to believe that. Their drinks came. She stirred her coffee slowly. Why didn't you say something? Her voice was soft. No accusation, just ache. He looked at her. I wrote you a letter? The day before graduation. She froze. You did. He nodded. I stood outside your locker, held it in my hand. But you were already gone. She covered her mouth. I thought you just never felt anything. I did, he said. I just didn't know how to speak it. Claire looked out the window. I used to wonder. That year after high school, every time someone said your name, I felt something, but I convinced myself I made it all up, that I'd imagined your eyes on me, that I was just a girl who fell for a ghost. Nathaniel's jaw clenched. You weren't? She looked at him again. So why now? After all these years, why speak now? He hesitated. Then, carefully, because I saw your name on that legal folder, and it felt like fate slapped me across the face. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out something thin, placed it between them. The original letter. still sealed. Still hers? Her hands trembled as she took it. She didn't open it, just stared at it. You kept it. I kept you, he said, in every way I could. There are some silences we carry for so long. They become part of who we are, until someone is brave enough to break them. Claire's eyes shimmered. She blinked the tears back. I cried on the plane, she whispered. I kept looking for you that morning. I waited. When you didn't show, I told myself I'd made it all up. Nathaniel reached across the table, not boldly, just enough to rest his hand near hers. You didn't imagine it. Their fingers touched, the lightest graze. A heartbeat passed, then another. We lost so much time, she said. We still have time, he replied, in a quiet coffee shop, surrounded by cinnamon and rain, and everything they never said. Two people finally stopped pretending they didn't remember. Chapter 8. The art healed both of them. Nathaniel stood at the door, unsure of what to bring. He had negotiated billion-dollar contracts with less hesitation, but standing on the threshold of her Brooklyn apartment, holding a bag of Thai food and a borrowed umbrella, he felt like a boy again. She opened the door barefoot, hair in a loose braid, cardigan sleeves pulled over her hands. You didn't have to bring dinner, she said. I wanted to, he replied. She stepped aside. Come in. The apartment was lived in, worn in the softest way. A tiny couch with mismatched cushions, watercolor smudges on the dining table, a jar of paintbrushes beside the sink. He inhaled citrus, lavender, and something faintly familiar. Then he heard it, a quiet hum from the back room, a child's voice. Claire glanced toward the hallway. Eli's working on something. He'll come out when he's ready. He's shy. Nathaniel smiled faintly. I can relate. They sat. Ate talked. Nothing heavy. She told him about her students. He told her about his mother's old garden and how he'd never learned to cook a proper meal. And then, Eli, she called gently, come say hello. A pause. Then a boy appeared at the doorway, small, cautious, eyes filled with careful wonder. This is Nathaniel, Claire said softly. He's a friend. Eli nodded once, then walked over to the table. He reached into the folder tucked under his arm, pulled out a page, held it out. Nathaniel took it carefully. It was a drawing, a rough pencil. Sketch a man in a dark coat, holding a paper in his hand, eyes wide, sad, kind. It was him. Nathaniel looked up, startled. Claire looked just as surprised. Eli, when did you draw this? The boy shrugged. Last night, after I saw him, I couldn't sleep. Nathaniel's voice was quiet. It's very good. Eli's cheeks flushed. You look like someone who remembers everything, even when it hurts. He turned and walked back to his room. The silence left behind was reverent. Claire looked at Nathaniel. He doesn't show his drawings to people. I don't either, he said. She reached for a second sketchbook from the shelf, larger, bound with ribbon. I want to show you something, she whispered. She opened to the middle. Page after page, paintings, sketches, watercolors, all of him, not photorealistic, not dated, but felt. Him sitting on a train, alone. Him watching someone walk away. Him standing behind glass, hand against a window. Every image echoed with unspoken words. I didn't know why I painted him, she said. Not until the elevator. And the letter. And your eyes? Nathaniel turned the page slowly, then paused. There, a painting of a boy. 17. Hoodie. Sketchbook in hand. The title. The one I forgot to see. He swallowed. Claire whispered, I think I've been painting you for 20 years. Sometimes we bury love so deeply inside ourselves. We forget it still lives there, waiting for light. He turned to her. Claire, he said gently, do you remember the day I dropped my sketchbook and you gave it back to me? She nodded. You looked like you wanted to disappear. I did, until you smiled. She reached across the table. Her fingers brushed his. They stayed like that, quiet, still, connected. Your art healed me, she whispered, even when I didn't know who it was about. He looked toward the hallway, toward Eli's closed door. And maybe now, he said, it can heal more than just us. Because when a child draws your sorrow without ever hearing your story, that's when you know the love you carried all these years was never wasted. Chapter 9. The Mural That Never Got Finished. The air smelled like old floor wax and memory. Claire walked down the familiar hallway, her fingers brushing the lockers, each one a drumbeat of her past. Nathaniel walked beside her, silent, his coat unbuttoned, hands in his pockets. Neither had spoken much since pulling into the parking lot. It wasn't the silence of discomfort. It was reverence, like returning to the church where your heart first learned how to ache. They reached the double doors at the back of the gym, pushed them open, stepped into the sunlight, and there it was, the mural, faded, chipped, ghosted by time, but still standing. Claire stared at it for a long while. Her eyes traced each forgotten line, each half-painted face. She stepped closer. We never finished it, she whispered. Nathaniel nodded. You left before we could. I didn't want to, she said. He looked at her. Then why did you? She turned, eyes brimming, but not falling. Because I thought I was forgettable, and I thought you'd already forgotten me. He stepped toward her. You were unforgettable, he said, and I was just too afraid to admit it. She took a breath, then opened the small case she'd carried from the car. Paintbrushes, acrylics, a jar of clean water. She looked at him. Help me finish it. He paused, then nodded. Together, they mixed the paint, and for the next 2 hours, time melted away. He painted the curve of a hand once left blank. She filled in the colors that had faded. They laughed when the wind knocked over the red. They didn't speak of the past, but they painted it, line by line, memory by memory. At one point, Nathaniel stepped back. Claire was standing on a ladder now, reaching to restore a beam of painted light across the top left corner. He watched her, and something in him, something he had kept locked for half his life, broke gently open. Claire, he said, quiet but clear. I loved you. I never stopped. She didn't look down. She kept painting, then said, I know. A pause. And she stepped down, faced him. Her palms were stained blue and gold, and I think I did too. I just didn't know what it was called. They stood there, side by side, gazing at the mural. It wasn't perfect. The paint clashed in places. The cracks in the wall couldn't be fully erased, but it was whole, finished. Claire turned to him. Do you want to see the secret? He raised an eyebrow. She led him to the corner of the wall, bent down, and pulled away a vine that had grown over the bricks. There, faintly scratched beneath the surface, CJ plus NC 2003, his initials, hers, a question mark. I left that the night before I left for Paris, she said. Because I didn't know what we were. He traced the letters with his fingers. Do you know now? She looked up at him, smiled. Yes, sometimes the things we leave unfinished wait for us. Because love, real love, doesn't vanish. It dries, cracks, fades, but it doesn't leave. That afternoon, beneath the mural they'd never finished, Claire Jensen and Nathaniel Kane finally did. Chapter 10. If this is our first life together. The eggs were definitely ruined. Nathaniel stared at the pan, frowning like he was solving a corporate merger instead of wondering how to salvage his third attempt at scrambled. Claire walked in, barefoot, sleep soft, her voice teasing. You're consistent. I'll give you that. He looked over his shoulder, mock wounded. It's a talent. She kissed his cheek, reached around him, and turned off the stove. How do you run a billion-dollar company but can't cook? He pulled her close. Delegation? He whispered into her ear. She laughed full and bright, not like the nervous sound from months ago. This one was real, whole. Later, they sat on the couch, him in her oversized robe, her sketching Eli's toy dinosaur in the corner. A record played faint jazz. Outside, a soft breeze curled the curtains. They weren't rushing anywhere. Not today. Maybe not ever again. Nathaniel looked around the room. 3 mugs, 2 pairs of shoes, 1 small dinosaur missing an arm. His coat hung on the back of a chair. Her sketchbook rested on the windowsill. This wasn't a penthouse. It wasn't sleek or curated, but it was theirs. Claire looked up suddenly. Do you ever think about how different it all could have been? He nodded. Every day. And does it make you angry? Sad? No. He said softly. Because this might be our first real life together. She smiled. You sound like you believe in reincarnation. He shrugged. Maybe we didn't get it right in the past. Maybe this is the version where we finally do. She reached for his hand. Then let's live it like it's our only one. That evening, Eli crawled onto the couch beside them, half asleep. Claire tucked a blanket around him. Nathaniel reached down and gently brushed a curl from the boy's forehead. I like him, Eli mumbled. Claire smiled. I do too. Later, after Eli had gone to bed, they stood on the balcony. No stars, just the soft hum of city lights. She leaned her head on his shoulder. What scares you now? He thought for a moment, missing something. Again, no, he whispered. Now, she looked up at him. He cupped her cheek. I'm not going to miss anything anymore. Inside, she pulled out a new canvas, 1 brushstroke, then another. She didn't paint the past this time. She painted him. Today, him making coffee, him holding a toy, him reaching for her hand in a crowded room without needing a reason. She called it First Life Together, and she hung it above the couch, the center of their home. Some love stories aren't loud. They don't arrive with fireworks. They show up late, after the damage, after the silence. But they stay. If this was their first life together, they were going to live it like it was their last. Some love stories arrive late, but they still arrive. He never thought he'd get the chance. Not after all those years. Not after the missed letters, the unsent sketches, the silence that became habit. But love, real love, doesn't live by our schedules. It waits, quietly, patiently, sometimes painfully, until we are finally brave enough to answer it. Claire didn't fall for the billionaire. She fell for the boy who never stopped watching her from the back of the room. She fell for the man who chose consistency over grand gestures, who loved her, not for who she used to be, but for every version she had become since. He never asked her to go back. He simply asked, "Can we begin now?" And that was enough. Have you ever wondered what might have happened if you had spoken up? Have you ever carried a feeling for years so long it stopped being a hope and became part of your bones? Maybe it's not too late. Maybe the love you think you missed is still waiting for you to notice it. Not in some fantasy, not in a letter from the past, but in the people who show up, the ones who stay, the ones who remember your name, even when you forget yourself. If this story touched something tender inside you, if you've ever loved in silence or waited for a second chance, then this story was written for you. Drop a comment below and tell us, have you ever held on to love even when it felt impossible? Have you ever hoped for someone to come back? We read every story and we see you. Like, subscribe, and stay with us, because the next story, it might just be the one you've been waiting for. We'd love to hear from you. What did this story make you feel? Drop your thoughts in the comments and rate it between 0 and 10. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you're always updated. More inspiring stories are waiting. Click here to watch them.